We are back with Jazzish on 90.1 FM WIUP. This is a special edition. We have a guest with us this evening, an artist whose record we've been playing a bit over the last few months, Stix Bones, whose record Breaks from the Soul Volume 2 is out now. Stix, how are you today?
I'm very good, Zach. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Like I said, we've had Breaks from the Soul has been out for maybe about a month and a half, 2 months now. It is definitely one that we have been playing on Jazzish and at other points on the station. And it's a great record. So congratulations on getting it out there into the world.
Thank you very much, Zach. Thank you very much. That means a lot to us.
Maybe we can just start a little bit at the top talking about the album and just some of the background on the project and how it all came together.
So, if you notice, I put Volume 2 in the title. Back during the pandemic, we came out with Breaks from the Soul. And what I wanted to do was, so I'm a product of hip hop and jazz. Like, I have a music degree in jazz, but I grew up in this New York City where hip hop was born. So, just my love for both genres, I wanted to do something where both genres could appreciate the art. And when I did Breaks from the Soul, the first one, it was a testing ground to see what would work and what wouldn't work. This was
Mm,
an EP where the songs weren't radio limited as far as time wise. It just continued on however they would flow, like records did in the '70s. And the response I got from that, you still don't know because during the pandemic, everybody was home. So anything to get them to forget about where they were at that moment was
right, right.
acceptable. Um, but the response was overwhelming. And I called up the Bone Squad and said, listen, we're going to do a volume 2. But this time, we're going to prepare it for it to go out really to the masses. And this is how it all came about.
Great. And you've got a great group of players on the record, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Bone Squad and the folks that you brought into the studio for it.
So the Bone Squad is my core musicians that are considered. First of all, let me explain to everybody what Bone even means. Bone is actually an acronym, which stands for Brothers of Noble Excellence. So Stix Bones, and these are my brothers of noble excellence, and S is the squad. So all these musicians I consider to be my brothers. They know my family, I know their family. So we have Al Brisbane, who I've worked with over the years. He's a great bass player who's worked with so many people. Then we have Sean Taylor, who is a singer, R&B artist, songwriter, trumpet. He's playing trumpet on the album. We have Maestro, which is an incredible arranger, songwriter in his own credit, who's playing keys and strings. Then we have Steve Brown, who is a guitarist, and just you just hear it. You hear him do his thing. We have our other brother who is based out of Jacksonville, Florida, Melvin Smith, who is a great straight ahead jazz artist. But every time I pick up the phone, he always answers. So he's playing tenor sax for us, especially on Moonlight Romance. You really get to hear Mel blow out on that. And then we have a guest. There's a group of players out of New Jersey called the Chopped Horns, and we have Mr. David Watson who is playing the flute on Take Flight.
Excellent. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a great group of musicians, and they all sort of shine at different points of the album, which is great. And I noticed too, and this applies to Volume 1 also, obviously, but reading the title quickly because of the series of various self-help books, etc., that are out there, you want to sort of read it as breakbeats for the soul, but it's breakbeats from the soul. So I was wondering if you could say a little bit about, if there the rationale behind that specific verbiage being from the soul as opposed to and or for the soul.
It's all music related, man. Like I've grown up with the term of soul music, Marvin Gaye, Motown. If you look at that, they consider that to be soul music, the R&B. So here is where you would find, now here's the play on words, right? So breaks is the term that is used in hip hop because breaks, if you do your history, is the part of the record where the DJ looped the part where a lot of the instruments wasn't playing. It was the drums. James Brown is perfect is what their number one go to. When 1, 2, 3, 4, get it, and you hear that break, that's the part that you always heard. So this is breaks in this EP from the soul because it's from soulful music, and here you find a break within it.
Perfect. And I mentioned to you before we hit record that when WIUP first linked up with Shauna at Jazz Dog Productions, she and I were chatting a little bit about the jazz programming at WIUP, and I had mentioned sort of the conceit of this show, which is, it's a framework of jazz, but really plays with and acknowledges the fluidity of those boundaries. And one of the angles that I like to focus on is music that might be marketed as jazz, but really pushes the boundaries or straddles various genres. And she immediately said, "You better check out Stix Bones." And she was right in that the record fits squarely into what this show is about. And sort of on that point, listening to the album, there are elements to my ears of jazz, of hip hop, of funk, of R&B, all sort of intertwined, all these influences and styles. But I don't know, it all works together. And it's not the kind of thing where I can point out, okay, this is the hip hop track, this is the jazz track. It's all intermingling together. And a stock question would be like, well, how would you categorize your music? But rather than that, I thought a different route we could take is that in combining all these elements into something new, what's the inspiration? How and where do you pull from to bring it all together?
That's a good question, man. So I don't know if I can answer that one.
I try.
That is a good question. Inspiration comes from, our faith and things that we experience in life. You kind of pull together and if you given a gift of creation, it manifests itself, within your music. But a lot of it happens to be with the musicians before me that influenced me on both sides of the spectrum of, you know, multiple genres. Keep in mind, I'm a drummer. I started out my career as a drummer. So what does the drummer do? The drummer is there to back up any and everybody you get the job for. So I played in jazz ensembles. I played in hip hop concerts. I played on R&B stages. I've done gospel. You know what I'm saying? I've done Latin jazz. So you got this musical jukebox as your profession on your instrument. And I think whenever you kind of manifest those experiences that you kind of make it work to the point where now you want to feed the people something, your experiences, your accomplishments and things like that, your talent, you find a way to kind of gel that together for people to enjoy it, especially if the focus is for your talent and is for the people to enjoy. You know what I mean? Like whether they're your fans or whether they're just people that you're being introduced to. If your focus is for them to have something to enjoy, you'll find a way.
Right. And I guess a similar kind of question, but a slightly different tack is you also did the production on the record. And
Hmm.
again, all these different styles kind of mixing together. And, historically, each of these styles has kind of their own kind of idiosyncrasies in terms of their production characteristics or traits or qualities, or even call it. So from a production standpoint, but it sounds consistent throughout, it's not as if it sounds like this is the hip hop track, this is the jazz track.
Yeah.
From a production standpoint, how did you work to find, to what my ears, again, is a really consistent production aesthetic, despite the aesthetic diversity and the kind of, I don't know if you want to say baggage that those genres have in terms of production, styles?
You know, you ever remember when you was younger, your parents come home with this new toy and that's the only toy you played with?
Right, right.
you know, until you got tired of it. And it was your birthday, you got toys. Christmas, you got toys. So today, to create music, there is so many things that you can use to get your sound and develop what you want to work with. No matter big multi dollar studios or a home studio. There's a toy that fits each situation. And I just came across some toys that, I was like to work with and wanted to experience with and indulge my sound in. And it wasn't, an overnight thing. I put some hours in, but I enjoyed working with those toys, musical software and things like that, that allowed me to get the production that I wanted to do for this particular project.
Well, it sounds great. And one of the tracks that we've been playing on the show is "Sip It on a Friday," which stuck out to me as just sort of this chill, relaxed tune that you know at least again framed by the title, maybe some suggestive power suggestion. But I could just picture sitting back with a beverage on a Friday evening, right? Um, and I love again we were talking about the contributions of the other musicians earlier. This track in particular, I love the trumpet lines on this track. But what can you tell us about this tune, its genesis, and how you approached it?
Well, I want to salute to Maestro, who is playing the keyboards and the synth bridge, and he actually helped write this song. We had an idea of what we wanted to do on a Friday. you know, you work all week. A lot of people want to party. A lot of people in the city life, the nightlife is about hitting the clubs and getting your dance on and stuff like that. But then there's some people who just like, yo, I just want to mellow out. Let me just find something nice to sip on and just mellow out. And that was the actual goal of what we wanted to come in. So, I got into my bag of toys and, we got into this groove and, got Sean and everybody together. We layered the horns just the right way, layered the guitars just the right way. And that was the beginning of creating something magical. But Maestro, man, who wrote the song, and laid those pianos just to cover it tastefully. That's where it was. I wanted that. I wanted it to be something where you can just turn your brain off and let it just carry you. And that's basically what we wanted it, the direction we wanted our audience to feel. No pressure. I'm around family and friends. We're gathering together, but it's a calm, comfortable mood.
Well, to my ears, you achieved that. But let's let the listeners take a listen to "Sippin' on a Friday" by Stix Bones off of Breakbeats from the Soul Volume 2, and we'll be right back. "Sippin' on a Friday" by Stix Bones off of Breakbeats from the Soul Volume 2, and we are chatting with Mr. Stix Bones himself right now. And kind of zooming out for a minute, I think that the music on the EP can serve a lot of different purposes. It certainly stands on its own, and I could see it getting picked up for other uses in terms of remixing and sampling, etc. And you had actually even sort of hinted at this earlier in the conversation about thinking back to the breaks and those classic soul and funk records from the 60s and 70s, for example, that were kind of the part of the architecture of hip hop. And I don't know if you're familiar with DJ Flow, but he has this Instagram series called Loops you can listen to over and over again, and it just focuses on those breaks and those loops. And there are passages throughout this album that I can hear in kind of a similar vein. Just those great bars that kind of reference or harken back to classic soul, funk, and jazz records that could provide the basis for another work. And to that point, you've got this series of breakbeats that you've made available for sale on your website. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that series and what moves you to make those available.
So the breakbeat record you're speaking of is Bones Beats Volume 1. That was one of my first, as my career was evolving. I was actually in the studio with DJ Scratch and Busta Rhymes. They were working on his record, and I walked into the room with a snare drum. And DJ Scratch said to me, he said, "This room is not big enough for a drum set. We don't even have mic. We don't have nothing in here." And he was right. He had his sampling machine. He had whatever Busta and them would do their vocals on, but the room was small, no room for a drum set. So he said, "You have to get into this room without your drum set." It's like one of those riddle me this, you know. And I went home that night. I did not sleep. I did not sleep. I did not sleep. And but I remembered what I saw in the room, and what was sitting in front of him was an MPC. He's hitting his pads. He got his drums. I was like, I got to get there. That's how I get in the room. So I was a part of this album called Lyricist Lounge Volume One, where I play drums on that album, which has some of the greatest hip hop artists on it, like Mos Def, Talib Kweli, De La Soul, like just some of the great rappers of that time. And I went to that studio where they recorded that album, and I said, "Yo, man, would you mind recording me just to do like some drum beats?" And the engineer was like, "Come on, Stix, man, you good? Let's just do it." And I did that record, just me, a cappella, all drums, and that to date has been sampled by hip hop in, I can't even countless over the years. So that is now, back then there was a label that had put it out, but that label is no longer functioning. And because I own the master, I'm able to, re-release as I desire. So artists own your masters. But just to be clear, on Bones Beats Volume One, that drum, just me playing drums, took the ears to a lot of the hip hop artists of today. And, that's really the foundation of why it was important to me to start recording and get into my artistry and do what we need to do. And now on Breaks from the Soul, I incorporate my drums. If you listen to a song called Take Flight, those drums are from Bones Beats Volume One.
And you just kind of blew my mind. I had no idea that you were on Lyricist Lounge, and that was a record that, um, not to date myself or you, I guess, but that was definitely a record that, in the days that we had CD players in cars, of which I was in high school. I don't even know how that record came into my group of friends, but that was one that definitely got heavy rotation in friends' cars and turned us on to a lot of those artists that you mentioned, because we hadn't heard of Mustaf and Talib Kweli and all those folks, right? So that was kind of a big record for us. So cool.
Yeah. So yeah, here you go. I'm that record. I was the music director for whenever they performed in New York,
Hmm.
because Lyricist Lounge was a live event, and then it led to the recording, which is why it's designed that way, as if you're on stage and they're introducing everybody, things like that. So on Volume One, I'm the only musician, because we had did it with a poet named Sarah Jones. We're on track 3 on the first disc, and that whole series, my band would play for all these artists whenever we did the stages live. Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
Foundation. That's my foundation.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, speaking of songs with perfect loops, the hook in Moonlight Romance is one of them to me. And that whole track just has this smoothed out, sexy groove that I think also helps with the pacing of the album, and it's sort of smack dab in the middle there.
Mhm.
Is there anything you can share as far as how you all put that one together?
You know, Moonlight Romance is something I wanted to do for people and their significant other. Everything doesn't, when you're around the guys, you got your sports, and you got, yo, but come on, fellas, sometimes you got to get with that significant other, and you got to give them their space too. And I wanted to have those moments where you get to that time where you just want to just have a good conversation, have a nice dinner, driving in the car, going out, something pleasant for you to listen to with your significant other, and that way you'll be able to enjoy the album as well. Still keeping the elements like you mentioned, because there is a loop in there that Al played. He played 2 types of bass. One, he has the regular bass, but if you listen closely in the choruses, there's like this little loop of a sound, and that's Al on his effect board. I was like, oh, I'm looping that. You know what I'm saying? So again, that element of breaks and what you have is even embedded in that, and I hope it is appreciated by the listeners.
Well, let's take a listen to Moonlight Romance by Stix Bones off of Breakbeats from the Soul Volume 2. and we will be right back with more Jazzish. Gonzo, back with you here on Jazzish, and following up our conversation with Stix Bones, we just heard Moonlight Romance from Breaks from the Soul Volume 2 out now. And we had chatted a little bit earlier about some of your other work, and you had kind of run down some of the other contexts that you've played and produced in. And so this, you have the distinct honor, I suppose, maybe it's not an honor, distinction at least, of being the final interview for the show for 2022. And this show just started in August, and most of the artists that we have interviewed have been folks just starting out. They're on their putting out the first or second albums straight out of school. Some are still in school, and you've got a lot of experience under your belt, from your own music to your production work, your work in TV, working with all these other artists. You've been involved in a lot of different projects, and as someone who is more established and has more experience under their belt, for those starting musicians, folks who are still in or just out of school, and particularly in the current industrial climate, what would your advice be to those folks trying to establish themselves?
The first and foremost thing I would say is you have to educate yourself on business. The term is music business. As artists, we only focus on the music, and we get our lawyer, our manager, and all these other people to handle our business. But if you look at history, a lot of the artists don't have anything to live on in their older years because they trusted somebody else with the business and did not oversee what it was. Oprah Winfrey kind of changed that mentality. She was like, you gotta know your business. This is your name, this is your likeness, you gotta know your worth. And then other people that in that circle with her, started to be like, yeah, we do need to know our own business. Athletes, different people in different industries, that became successful was like, well, I know this is what got me here. But if I don't educate myself on the business side, it could all be wiped out. It could all be, and you hear these horror stories time and time again from some of our favorite artists who go broke, gotta file for bankruptcy. Why is that? Because you ignore the other part, which is business. If you want to be successful, if you want to see your art make it to the dreams and goals and ambitions that you have to educate yourself on business. How to sell it, how to market it, all of the above, how to pitch it to the people who could do things for you. You have to educate yourself on business. In my, as you mentioned, I've done so many projects. Each one was a learning experience, creatively and business wise. Each one was an experience. And the only reason why I'm still sustaining a career is because I took the time to educate myself on, let me see how this is supposed to work, or who can work this. Who do I need to pitch this to? How do I pitch it to that person? There was one time I walked into a management office and just with like my resume, and the secretary was there, and I walked in. I said, "Hey, just to the A&R, here's my resume." Because think about this, guys. As an artist, as a musician, and as an artist, this is the only job where they don't ask you for a resume.
Right.
Any other job you got to apply for. They want to see where you've been, what you've done. But when you say I'm a singer, I'm a musician, they don't ask you, well, let me see your resume. Why is that? Why is it that kids in Juilliard who's graduating don't go to Warner Brothers and Sony Music with their resume? It's who you know. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Who you're recommended by. So I get back to my story. I went to the office with my resume just to say that, hey, I went to college, I graduated, I'm a professional drummer, got a BA in this. And when I was heading towards the elevator, I saw the receptionist take my resume and dump it right in the garbage. She didn't even care. I had to figure out another way how to make something happen because the human resources was just not interested. So educate yourself as best you can. It's very important on both sides of the spectrum. If there's anybody that you ask to manage you, drill them with questions. How does this work? Why did you decide to do that? How come I'm staying here and not how come I'm staying at the Days Inn and not at the Hilton? You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta ask these questions. How much did you charge? How much am I getting paid? What am I getting paid per hour? Ask these questions. How much does it cost? Why does it cost so much? How did you get that free pass? Ask these questions. I'm gonna leave it like this on a sense of paper. Before you see green paper, you got to go through black and white paper.
That makes sense and good advice. And and there's so much now, of course, and you've sort of seen the whole shift over, the last 20, 30 years with this. I mean, there are so many tools that are there and accessible now for musicians in terms of marketing and promotion and distribution, everything else. Like, but just because they're there doesn't mean you have to know how to use them to be effective, right? I mean, I always tell my students that the great thing about the digital age as an artist or producer or whatever is that anybody can do it in terms of getting. The bad thing about it is that everybody can do it. And so you have to find a way to make yourself distinct and noticeable from all the other, 'cause everybody, what you want to do, there are thousands of other people that want to do the exact same thing, that have access to the same tools that you do now, and you've got to find a way to make it work, right? But yeah, no, I think that the point about business is a wise one, especially now. And you mentioned owning your masters, and that's something that has become more and more known over the last decade or two. Um,
Yeah, I mean, when you have to own your masters, when you create the music and you're walking out of the studio, you have the master in your hand, you own it. It's not until you try to get it out to a specific audience that you talk to somebody and they say, hey, well, I have the terms in order to do that. But it's going to cost you something. It's going to cost you a percentage of
right.
that master. You know what I'm saying? Because they know the value of it. What's the purpose of having 100% of something that you don't know how to utilize it to your benefit?
Right.
And if you need assistance in making something happen, then you got to be able to negotiate an agreement to where you don't lose out everything at the end of the day. And just to be clear, any artist that you see on your favorite, whether it be MTV, BET, any medium that you see or you hear on radio, whatever that artist is, they didn't get there by themselves. They negotiated something with somebody to offer a percentage of that creation so that they both can get this for us to hear and see. They didn't do it by themselves.
Right.
Bill Gates did not create Microsoft by himself. You know, a lot of people don't understand that you gotta negotiate certain deals, and if you do it right, you'll come out on top at the end. But everybody needs to have somebody get help. You know what I mean, in some form or fashion.
And again, that's also about, as you were saying before, knowing the value of that help, but also knowing the value of your work as well, right? And not selling yourself short and not selling the labor that you put into that short either.
Absolutely.
Okay, getting a little heavy there, but to lighten the mood a little bit. But it is important, and I'm glad that you shared that with us. But here's one just for fun to lighten the mood. Um, Coming back to Breaks from the Soul Volume 2, if you could have your choice of someone to do a remix of one track from this album, what would the track be and who would the producer be?
Oh man, that's a great question. Well, the artist I would love to work with would be Bob James, piano player.
Mm,
And if I could do one of the songs over with him, it would be the song Fearless because of the energy of the record. Um, but Bob James is just an iconic musician whose music is sampled.
Right.
I mean, he's probably one of the top guys to be sampled. I don't know. Do you remember Run DMC's Peter Piper?
Of course.
That
Un-
Peter Piper Pick Peppers, that beat that they're on is a James Brown. I mean, is a Bob James record that I didn't, when I was hanging out with the DJs and I heard them play the original, I was like, wow, that is a Bob James record. As you get older and you get exposed to some things, you kind of appreciate the musicians that these producers in hip hop actually listen to.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, wow, they got that from a jazz record? Incredible. Uh so yeah, Bob James, ever have the opportunity to work with that man. Uh Fearless would be one of the songs. Um uh y- you know, the album has so many great gems in it. He can touch on anything. He can touch on Moonlight Romance, and still make it tremendously beautiful. But yeah, Bob James, man, I'm a huge fan of his work because he's one of the ones who didn't have a hip hop focus in his production, but is sampled by
Right.
so many hip hop producers. Wow.
Solid choice. Solid choice. Well, I think we have time for one more song to take us out. But before we get to that, let me just remind listeners that, again, the album is Breaks from the Soul, Volume 2, Stix Bones, out now across streaming platforms. And it looks like there is also a physical release shipping soon.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, who has CDs anymore?
Just me, the old guy.
And my brother was like, look, man, you can't you gotta be prepared for any and everybody. So yeah, I just placed my order. My batches of CDs will arrive at the end of the month. We're in December now. Well, just before New Year's, I should have the batch of CDs. So for those of you who are not into what's a download? Get MP3 plus 5, like if you're confused with the digital and you just want to put that silver disc in and press play, you can only get the CDs from my website, which is boneentertainment.com. That's where the CDs will be available for purchase, and my team will be able to get it out to the mail to you as soon as you do that. And we would love to, accommodate you in those ways. And as we perform too, a lot of people ask to buy the CD opposed to, hey, let me just download it off of this digital platform. So, we want to be prepared for that as we look forward to performing at a city near you in 2023.
Great. And then again, that website is boneentertainment.com, spelled exactly how you think. And you can pre-order Breaks from the Soul Volume 2. You can get the previous releases there, some other merch. And you alluded to, I'm glad you mentioned it, because there's a tab for shows, but nothing listed just yet. Are you in the process of still planning those dates and kind of figuring out a route?
Yeah, our booking agent, Ed Tankis over at Blue Plate Radio, is, submitting to festivals and venues. We're in December now, so everything leads up to what they have spots open in 2023. And as soon as we get some solid dates down, I'll be the first to know. Please hit me up to sign up to my mailing address, my mailing list rather, which is also on boneentertainment.com. And you'll be able to get access to any and everything what me and the Bone Squad is doing.
Excellent. Look forward to see you on stage in 2023. So we'll go out to another track, Promenade, and you had mentioned there's some plans for a dance to go along with this.
Yeah, so promenade actually means walk. It's another word for walk. So there is this great thing. I don't know if you ever been to a wedding reception or family barbecue, when a certain song comes on, everybody gets in this
Right.
group
Right.
and they start doing this line dance. So I wanted to show my appreciation, as many people has danced to Stix Bones and the Bone Squad. We're on stage where we just wanted to do one of those line dances. And shout out to Melissa LeRae Legions, who choreographed a great line dance to the song Promenade. And we actually just released the video on YouTube. You can Google it, Stix Bones Promenade, and then you'll see the video of the ladies doing this nice little line dance that we will be doing whenever we perform the song live. So, or whenever a DJ hear it. So be the first to know the dance and learn the dance, and in that way, when everybody's sitting around and they see you on the dance floor doing your thing to the song, they're gonna be like, I want to learn that dance. And you're the one who can help them learn it. You're the one who will be the ones that, hey, I got this first, and share it to everybody there. So Promenade, the line dance, whenever we perform it live, we're gonna have the line dance happening. And it is a lot of fun. It's very easy and it's a lot of fun for men and women to do.
So that's your homework, folks. Go to YouTube, learn the steps to Promenade. So when Stix Bones is out on tour in 2023, you're ready, you're prepared. So we'll go out to play Promenade. But Stix, thank you so much for taking the time. Congratulations again on the record. It's a great record. Again, we've been pulling from it over the last couple months, but it really is just one of those unique releases that harkens back to sort of some musical history, but sounds fresh and current also. So congratulations on pulling that off, and looking forward to seeing you hopefully in 2023.
Thank you very much, Zach. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for playing me amongst your musical audience. We're much appreciated. And yes, we look forward to seeing you guys in 2023.